Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I think we have quite a few people online now, and I would first of all like to apologize to anybody this morning who joined us at 11. Juliet and I, my colleague who's on the call with me from the Flinn Foundation, apologize. We had a technical issue on our side, and I do know there were 18 people waiting for us to join. So I'm happy to see a lot of people being able to rejoin us this afternoon. At the end of this call, that we are recording it, and at the end of this call, we'll send out a note to everybody with the recording for future reference. But it'll also be posted to our website. Well, I say the recording will probably be up there tomorrow at the latest. Okay. First of all, if people online would just, if you're interested, just letting other people know what organizations you're with. I just recommend that beside your name, you just add your organization. And it really helps us to build out our network of people across our ecosystem who are interested in this whole area of translational clinical work. And that is the focus of what we're going to talk about today. I'm, as I said, Mary O'Reilly. I'm the Vice President of Bioscience Research Programs here at the Flinn Foundation. I'm here with my colleague, Juliet Gomez. Juliet is the Program Manager for our Translational Sequence Program. And we plan to spend the next 20 minutes or so describing the program, how to apply, and how the grantees are selected. This is a program that has been ongoing for the last 10 years, but over the last few years, I will say that we've been refining it and really beginning to focus down more from the basic side into the translational side. So really, we're talking to people who have developed technologies in the lab, developing therapeutics, and are at a point where they really think they have something they could license or commercialize. So it's the later stage, and it's not to say that we have no interest in basic sciences. We do, but not in this particular program. Feel free to chat or ask questions, put them in the chat, or at the end of this. I think we have maybe 18 or so people online. It's not a huge number, so if people don't want to put it in the chat, just raise your hand and you can open up your mic at the end of this and ask questions. I think it's really important. People feel free to ask questions. I think it's instructive for all of us to know, and we learn a lot more by sharing. The sort of general background to this and to the Flinn Foundation. The foundation is one of the older foundations in the state. When it started out in the early 60s, our founder was actually a cardiologist from St. Joseph's Hospital, renowned in his time. And also he himself was very interested in bringing new technologies. I believe he was one of the first to do the first pacemaker surgery here at St. Joseph's Hospital. And also he was interested in bringing in speakers from outside and really trying to elevate the work that was being done across the state. In the early 2000s, here, there were other foundations coming on. So Flinn actually took the opportunity to bring in Battelle to do a survey across the land, or to do landscapes or study with Battelle and a whole lot of over 100 local partners to look at what the needs were in the state. And actually there was a need for people to really help external philanthropy to help in funding research. And that is what we have been doing primarily since then. So within the Bioscience Roadmap, which was the outcome of this work with Battelle, it actually laid out a roadmap for making Arizona an actual hub of biosciences, differentiating us, or sort of growing our economy beyond, the normal 5 C's that everybody talks about. And actually over time, this is continuously measured, and over time we've actually made great strides. And this year we had seen significant job growth, significant increase in wages, the number of companies here, etc. So really our focus is how do we as an organization working with you really feed into this ecosystem and help elevate it so that we become bigger and better, and more importantly, that we're actually developing innovations here that are really helpful and useful to our patient populations and people across the state, and obviously beyond, because our markets are all well outside Arizona as well. So that's the program. Over time, we've invested as an organization. They've invested over $6 million in this. There are 50 or so projects. If you're looking at our website and looking at projects that we've funded in this program to date, I would suggest that you look at the last 2 to 3 years as being the most relevant to what we're looking for today. The eligibility of the program supports teams that include scientists and clinicians from Arizona-based research institutions and or healthcare systems. So if somebody is working in Barrow Neurological Institute, certainly we've had applications from Barrow and have had people win awards. If you're working at TGen, if you're working across the university systems, if you're working at Mayo and have an ASU collaborator, these are the groups that have generally applied to us. And that is not to say that others that we just haven't really tapped into yet have not. So if you're working with an institution, please reach out to us. If it's not a group that Flinn has interacted with before, we are really happy to make these new connections and really work sort of broadly across the state in general. These projects, I will say, because they're clinically based, or you're looking at clinically sort of meeting clinical needs, it is really important, I think, for any team, even if today you're working, say at ASU, I think having clinicians or health professionals on your team is really important for making sure that the design of the product is what will be useful eventually, and that also that you become more aware of, or you're taking into consideration what it takes to actually bring a product to market. Again, it can be quite early, it can be a little later, but really you as a group have to have a focus on, yes, this is something that's really important to bring out of the lab. And I think that's really a key point, is having that mindset to say, yes, we're willing to really work on this. We want to do this, and this is our plan moving forward. An important piece of this, because we're working with people who are based in institutions. The reason we do that is because we're a 501c3. We can only fund other 501c3s. There are other mechanisms if you're dealing with companies, but if somebody is doing research in a company today, they're not associated with a university. This is not a program where we could fund them. Okay, so it really is for people in the health system and people in the university system. You will require a letter of support from the head of your institution, whether it's a vice president of research or an equivalent, to show that they too, because they will be the administrators of the grant, that they are willing to be supportive of you. Okay. In the next slide, the actual benefits of the program, or what the program actually offers, is really there are 10 projects selected, or up to 10 projects. Each project gets an award of $100,000. It's over an 18-month period. And then the really nice thing is that we've sort of built in an opportunity for follow-on funding. So at the end of the 18-month period, each of the teams get to present the work that they've done and their plans for next steps to a panel of reviewers, and up to 2 of those projects will be selected for follow-on funding, which is $100,000 for 12 months. We have moved to working with grantees more in a cohort, in the fashion of a cohort. So everybody is coming together every quarter. People report out to each other on their progress. There's generally a 5-minute presentation with a few minutes of questions and advice. We bring panelists in to help in that. And also the whole objective of this all the time is sort of learning and making progress. Problems obviously arise at the end of this whole program. You could find that your research in your current direction is not going to go the way you want it to go, and you have to pivot. All of that we see as value. I mean, in the end of the day, it's all about, I have an idea, I have work done to validate that. We might be in animal or mouse models now. We might have a device that we have already done some work on, etc. And at some point in time, you really need to know, is this going to get the last mile? And that's the opportunity with this type of funding. Again, we host workshops. We bring in experts as we see, local entrepreneurs, others from outside the state. Again, all the time to sort of, again, hone our skills on what it takes to do this work, because it's super complicated. It can be very lonely if you're working in a lab on your own. There's real benefits to working in a group. And also the significant benefits is actually building a network early so that you get to know people in the FDA. You get to know other local entrepreneurs. You get to know the NIH a little better so that if you do need to go for SBIR funding, etc., that you sort of are developing those paths. You sort of get to a sense of who might be angel investors and things like that in the community. Some of these people you won't need for quite a bit of time. There's always huge benefits to like making that type of contact early and building it up over time. And then you also get membership of the Arizona Bioscience Steering Committee, which again is a group that come together quarterly of over 100 of the sort of leading leaders in the healthcare space, both from a institutional perspective and from a company's perspective. They come together and you get access to them to sit on those committee meetings. You know, sometimes 50 people turn up, sometimes 60, but the nice thing is that you now have a name and an email address, and you have us, and we can make direct connections for you if you see that as a need. The basic funds, what you can use the funds for, all program-related lab expenses, prototype development, testing and validation, your standard animal model testing, publications of data. You can use it for some travel if you're going to conferences to present the results or going to conferences to learn more. I was recently at the MedTech conference in Boston, one of the largest medical device conferences. And I have to say that if people are developing devices and they haven't had the opportunity to go to a conference like that, you know, it has to be put on the list of something that needs to be done. The FDA were there in huge numbers. You know, they had a town hall, everybody got up to speak. There was a whole sequence of funders there. Those 50 startup companies, they're all pitching their ideas. So, you know, it's in these environments is where we make those connections, those really important connections that will provide us with the next step of funding or a pathway to taking our product out of the lab. And next slide, Juliet.
Do you want to say something about
that I said there was that in the funding cannot be used for the salary of the principals, and it cannot be used to pay down some previous debt. So it can only be used relative to the date of the grant to the end of the grant for the list of things that we just talked about. If there are special areas that you aren't mentioned here but you need, then you come back and you discuss it with us. And generally, you know, we're quite flexible. Really, the objective again is to get the work done. The expectations are quarterly reports and presentations that I talked about, just relative to it's sort of a more cohort style of management of this project. When people come in on a quarterly basis, it's all Zoom and give those presentations. Those presentations then go to the quarterly report. So there's no requirement for you to be writing, you know, another report 3 months later. We just ask that actually the financials come in at the same time. You know, sometimes that's easy, sometimes it's a little bit more difficult, but you give us what you have. Again, if you don't choose to participate in the follow-on funding, you know, at the end of a grant period, like any grant, there's a 45-day window in which to send in your final report. However, we do really encourage everybody to take that opportunity to pitch for the follow-on funding. Even the process of doing that actually is useful. If you're dealing with the IRB or need IRB before a grant can start, it's generally highly recommended that it's there. If there are special circumstances that need to be discussed, and again, these are things that can be discussed. However, IRB can be a long and, you know, sometimes you can run into issues. Obviously, it can take a long time. But so having that in advance is helpful, so it doesn't delay the start of a grant. Again, plans for intellectual property, you know, knowing that maybe you have to negotiate those rights with the university, but having a clear plan of how you're going to do that, when it's going to happen, etc., is also important. And we would recommend that most people are working with their tech transfer groups. I know the group certainly down at Tucson and ASU and NAU are highly motivated to help their research community. And we work with them closely as well, and similarly across the hospital systems. These are a list of some projects that we actually ran or got funded in last year's cohort, just as an idea of the types of projects. We have an anti-venom development with Dr. Nielsen down at the U of A. He's at the College of Medicine in Tucson. Improve stroke patient management through medical imaging and artificial intelligence, another U of A project. The development of rapid immunotherapy for West Nile virus, Professor Bartelli at ASU, a wearable robotic gait product that's being developed by Zach Lerner of NAU, commercialization of blood-based assays for the monitoring of patients with pancreatic disease. So here you have a diagnostic. And here you have a training tool, a virtual portfolio for skull-based surgical training being run by Dr. Chang. And then we thought this was one of the best actually titles, Tattoos for Endoscopic Imaging, that Dr. Reggie at ASU is developing. Basically, this is a new type of ink for marking areas where surgeons will eventually go in and remove a cancer or an issue in the colon. So that's the type of project. Again, health tech is an emerging area. We're beginning to see more of that. What I would say is health tech is interesting because our focus has always been on therapeutics, diagnostics, etc. So when you're looking at a health tech project that fits into this program, it really has to do something sort of within that space. So, using artificial intelligence for X, or using it in enhancing imaging or image processing, or a new way to handle patient populations or taking data. That is what I would say. I think there's the opportunity is for somebody who is thinking of a health tech project or working on health to come and talk to us early to see if it sort of fits into the portfolio of projects. And then the other thing I would say is, because health tech can be quite different relative to the levels of expertise or the type of experts that you require to come in and review that, we do take all of that into consideration in putting our review panels together. Next slide.
That would be me.
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to hand over to Juliet, and Juliet's going to talk through now the actual application process. Thanks, Juliet.
Sure. First, if you have any questions all along the process, you can email Mary or myself at these email addresses, which are also on the website and flyer. All pertinent questions will be added to the FAQs that we will put on our website. As you know, all of the information about the program may be found on our website at www.flinn.org/seed grants. To apply for the program, just go to the Seed Grants webpage on our website, and there will be a link to the application. When you get to the website, you'll have to register. Then you may begin the application. Now, if you've already registered because you've applied previously, hopefully you'll remember your password. If not, just go to forgot your password and it'll help you. Now, there is also an area where you can invite others from your team to have access to the application as well. You'll see that as you start your application. Now, this year, we've made it easier to apply for the program. First, you will fill out the online application with your basic contact and project information. Next, you'll have 300 words for a project summary. In layman's terms, you'll need a brief summary of the project that explains complex ideas and technical and scientific terms to people who do not have prior knowledge about the subject. So make it so your grandmother would understand what it is you're doing. You will then provide an application presentation deck, and we'll go over that next. And as Mary mentioned, a letter signed by your institution's president, CEO, senior VP of research, or designee affirming support for the project proposal being submitted. Again, there is a template of that letter on the application, and you'll find that right at that where you have to upload it. So for the application presentation deck, this will be a 15-slide PowerPoint presentation. Now, before you panic, there is a template available on the application that you may use. Each slide on that template describes what should be on it. It is important that you provide all the information required and in the order listed. The order is important as it coincides with the judge's reviewing form. Now, here are the topics that will need to be presented in the deck. This list is on the application, and we will also make this PowerPoint available to you after this info session. Now, if you have submitted your application and want to make any edits, just go to the section you want to edit, click on the 3 dots in the upper right corner of that section and hit edit. You can also download the application and all of the materials you submitted. So the deadline for the application and all required materials is 5 p.m. on Friday, February 3rd. So you have a few months here. Please remember that you may edit your application as many times as you'd like prior to the deadline. If you have any questions regarding the program, application process, and eligibility, email them to us. And if you have any technical issues with the platform where your application is, please let me know. I'll help you any way I can. You can also, again, find our contact information on the Seed Grants webpage. All questions will be posted to the FAQs as appropriate. And all those questions, except for those of a routine nature, must be received at least 7 days prior to the application deadline. Now, each month we will hold office hours to answer any questions you may have via Zoom. The dates and times and links for these meetings are posted on our Seed Grants webpage. Now I'll turn it back over to Mary to talk about the review process.
Yeah, and Juliet, would you mind just throwing back up the slide with the slide deck? I think we should maybe walk through that just so everybody is clear on the components. So, you know, we wanted to make this as easy as possible for people and not for you all to have like a lengthy application. So doing this as a slide deck, everybody does presentations regularly. We thought might be more straightforward, but it also lays out the key topics. So I seriously would recommend that as listed here, first of all, that things are presented in this order because it will be reviewed by the reviewers. They will have a rubric that matches the slide in this order. So it will make it easier for the reviewers. You know, a title slide, everyone will have a title slide. The clinical need and scale of the problem on slide 2, current solutions and their limitations on slide 3, proposed new solutions and expected benefits on slide 4. Slide 5 and 6 are really around the development work done to date. So what work have you done to date? Slide 7 is validation. You know, what have your results shown you to date? Has somebody, you know, who's applying for this done the the program? Have you been out talking to potential customers or payers? You know, what type of feedback have they given on your design, etc., or your product? Have you a prototype? Your plan for commercialization and licensing, the regulatory requirements and your plans to address them. So what does your product require? Is it a 510K? You know, have you to go to the FDA? If you do, like, what do you know at this point in time? Now, there's no expectation that you know everything, yeah, but there is an expectation that you have thought through some of this and you can present it knowing that you're going to use the next 12 months or the next, you know, 3 years to really refine this message. But this is the opportunity to start really laying out your plan for what you're going to do on this project. You know, have you thought about it? Have you intellectual property? Have you thought about it at this point in time? Are you talking to your tech transfer group? Have you a strategy in place? Have you a patent pending? You know, all of that goes on slide 11. The funding you've received to date, and this can range from you know, what NIH grants have supported this work to date? Have you had other philanthropic funds? You know, because obviously you're still in the university, so you're not saying that you have angel funds or development funds. Now, I will say that we also do get groups who are already sort of thinking of spinning out companies. So work is still happening in the university. There might be a group over here who are sort of beginning already to commercialize. That's sort of, there's a fine balance. So what we're funding is what's happening in the lab, but then, you know, they obviously have a richer body of IP, and, you know, they can put that down on these slides. the project team, resources, and the environment. So this is important because, you know, we're not asking people for big, long, or for their full resumes, but, you know, putting in who your key members are, you know, assistant professor of, you know, working in surgery. If you have an engineer on your team, if you have some clinicians on your team, you know, the sense is, have you got the right people on this team to actually do the work that you want to do? Okay, and that's important. And then the environment, that's an important one to say, are you surrounded by the resources that you need, again, to get this work done? And you know, if somebody happens to be working in a lab or an area where they feel that they're under-resourced and are not in the right environment, again, I wouldn't see that as something that disqualifies you, because all of this is taken into consideration. But I think letting people know is an important piece of this. Okay. And then again, slide 14 is a breakout of what are you going to use the grant funds for. There was a question in the chat on, can you use funds to support students? You can use funds, you know, obviously the balance, how you balance the use of funds is indicative of the work you're going to do. So I would say that if you have students working on it, if you have a postdoc working on it, a portion of the funds go to that, because obviously you have some material costs, you have other things that need to be brought in. So it really, again, it's about, have you got a coherent story about what you're going to do, and a clear plan for the use of funds. Now, if you have funds coming in per student from another source, then let us know that. And then this work might be to support a lot of new animal studies or models, etc. And then at the last slide, an important slide, is what else should the reviewers know about the project? And so what else is it that makes your project stand out from the crowd? I would say there. Again, just the fact that it's 15 slides, you know, be cognizant that people are reading this. You know, this is a standard. We'll have multiple reviewers looking at this. So like, you know, take that into consideration. So it's not like a whole lot of tiny font in the hope to get masses amount of information. Clear, crisp information is really what's needed. Have you delivered by the end of this a really good story as to why there's a compelling reason that reviewers would look and say, wow, this is really good. They have real potential and they're meeting a real need. So, you know, sort of winning points that way, I think is just a critical part of helping distinguish your proposal, you know, from the crowd. So I will move on. Where are we, Juliet? Oh yeah. So the review process. Again, last year, and again, I'm just answering a question that came in. So last year was the first time Flinn actually opened this up broadly to the community. Previously, just because we're a relatively small foundation and we don't have huge capacity, like from a person perspective to sort of monitor this, we actually did it by invitation. So we used ask invitations, you know, to send in projects or their proposals and provide grants that way. So when we opened it up, we had no idea, you know, what was out in the environment. So we got 50 really good applications last year. I would anticipate, I'm not sure, but I would anticipate we might get more this year. And really why we'll get more is because we're making a real effort to get the message out that these opportunities are there. We're trying to work more broadly across the community just to make sure that people actually know that there's this opportunity. It is not too often that these opportunities come up in general for this type of work. You know, it's undiluted funds. We are, as an organization, we're not too restrictive on how funds are used, as long as funds are used sort of well or within a project, but we don't have any serious requirements around that would limit what you could do. And we're flexible, you know, if by the end of 18 months, if you do need a no-cost extension, then that generally happens. You know, again, assuming everything is going well. So the criteria, we will put every proposal that comes in will be seen by at least 3 reviewers. We haven't yet, depending on how many proposals come in, you know, there's some work we have to do to make sure we can extend the number of people we have in our pool to do the reviews, etc. But the general basic promise is at least 3 people will be reviewing every proposal that comes in, and we make up the review teams with likely somebody from the health system, somebody from the academics, and somebody maybe from more the business aspects of bringing products to market, and promise that we will provide feedback to everybody on their projects. Now, if a project comes in and it really is an early project, like, don't be surprised if you get back your return email just saying, look, this is super early, and the review panel make 1 or 2 suggestions if you're really thinking about bringing this forward. And like, again, as in always, and I think for everybody who submits proposals to NSF and IH, feedback can be highly valuable, so that we consider this one of the sort of benefits of actually even getting a proposal in, is the fact that other people get to see it and can help you individually refine your work such that you can make this type of progress in it. And yeah, so that's it really. The teams, at least 3 people, depending on the number of grants that come in, the proposals, we might have it split into 2 sections where, there's a group who do an initial review of all of the projects and sort of funnel it down to maybe the top 20, and then it goes to another whole sequence of reviewers to get it down to the top 10. Basically, the reviewers come in with the final recommendations that go to our CEO, to Tammy McLeod, to make the final selection of 10. But by saying that, we actually, we depend on our reviewers to really help refine that list for Tammy to make that final call.
I think it's important to also note that many of these reviewers are geographically diverse. So a lot of them are coming from outside of Arizona. So there won't be any bias or worry about someone from U of A scoring the applications, or ASU will have unbiased reviewers, many who don't even know any of these projects or any of the people engaged.
Yeah, and we don't say that, it's just sometimes if we have people, it helps us maintain a high level of neutrality. So I'm not saying that everybody on the panel would be from outside the state, but we really strive to bring in experts from out of state to be peppered throughout our review panels to maintain that and just really maintain that level, that neutrality as they go through their reviews.
And notifications.
Yeah, so we do apologize for, this is actually quite a long window, so the application obviously is open at this point in time. As Juliet mentioned, our closing date is in February, but people won't be notified till May. And it seems long, but we do have to work internally to a cycle with our board. So we don't have the opportunity for the final selection to go to the board till early May. But it also then allows us, and hopefully, to really get the message out and to get people sort of in tune with this opportunity. So I think we could open it up to questions, and I think I see from Gandhi the question on applications. As I mentioned, last year we had 50 and funded 10, so that was that's a great opportunity. Yeah, there's another question from Lee. The funding cannot be used for the PI. The PI salary should be covered by their institution or other, but it can be used in the case of if there is a clinician, there is an opportunity for them to be able to buy down time, since that's a real difficulty for them. Yes, the review panel, there's a question again, we make up the review panels with people from the academic areas, somebody from a business group, somebody who might be working at some of the larger, say, pharmaceutical, medical device, diagnostic companies, and then, or even smaller ones, but just that type of person. Maybe somebody from engineering, somebody who has commercialization type experience with medical devices or therapeutics or health tech. And we just try and bring that sort of cross-disciplinary group together to review the applications.
I can answer one. It's how many applications do you usually get? How many projects are funded, which you may have seen in there, and that, as well as only 501c3 organizations can apply. And just to give you a hint, so last year, which was the first year that we opened applications without by invitation only, we received 50 applications, and we received them from all 3 universities, from Grand Canyon University, from the VA, we received them from TGen, from Honor Health, Dignity Health, Banner Health. Those are the type of organizations that we've received them from. Mary, are there other organizations that you can think of?
No, and really what we are saying broadly across the community, given that we have opened it up, as an organization, we want this to be open broadly. So if there are organizations, if you're in an organization that we haven't mentioned, we're delighted if you can send in an application as well. We want to try as an organization to be as supportive of the breadth of the community as possible.
That's right. And there will be 10 grants, up to 10 grants, each with $100,000.
Yeah. And if anybody is online and just wants to unmute themselves or on their video to ask a question, feel free.
Yes, we'd like that if we could. I had submitted the question about the 501c3. So I guess just to reiterate, then it is only open to 501c3. I don't know the organizations. I'm not familiar with the organizations you're talking about, but it is only open to 501c3 organizations. Then is that correct or no?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So if you look at if you look at the universities, they're all 501c3s, and generally yes, when grants are paid, they can sometimes be paid through the foundations of the universities, similarly through the hospitals. Okay. And really where people, let's say if you're currently working with a company, even if an early stage company, we can't make grants directly to you.
Right.
Yeah. So it's just tax law that prevents us from doing that.
Follow-up question to that, then we're a startup company, but we're affiliated with Arizona State. With two of our founders are at Arizona State, and they're still working at Arizona State. So some of the work they do is related to what they do. So it would be appropriate for them to apply for this particular grant for work within the university. Then would that be?
That is correct. Yeah. And the grant would then be administered through ASU. And
yes,
just note too that for institutions, the indirect is only up to 10%. It's 10%, which is standard for philanthropic organizations. But this is why from some smaller institutions, they can run into some problems because they expect to have a higher indirect. So this is why too we need to make sure that your VPs of research, etc., are happy to be supportive of this. Yeah, that you actually don't get penalized for it.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And unfortunately, we already closed our applications for our bioscience entrepreneurship program, but those applications open every September. So anyone who's got a company, we'd love for you to apply for that.
Yeah.
And that is for organizations.
Yeah, and actually, and why we can run that program is, in actual fact, we work with a partner. We work with AZ Bio as an organization, and we actually give the grant to AZ Bio, and AZ Bio actually administers the funds. So they're a 501c3, or 501c6, I think. So it's a different mechanism. Yeah.
Any other questions? Feel free to open your mic. And if you, I was going to say, if anyone even wants to just email the questions to us, we're happy to respond.
Yeah, there is a question from Lee, just on the indirect. I know I just said it earlier, it's up to 10%.
And there's a question, is there an opportunity to submit a revised project next year?
Sorry, Juliet, can you repeat?
Yeah, is there an opportunity to submit a revised project next year?
Does that mean, yeah, I mean, this program is scheduled to run for the next few years. Yeah. So if somebody isn't ready this year.
So sometimes like NIH, you can do revisions. If you have a really good project, but it's just not good enough to be funded, but it might be a good candidate for next year. Do they have any mechanism for that? Or is it you start from scratch every year?
Well, what I would say is if somebody applied for us last year and let's say they didn't get, they didn't win an award, well, absolutely they can send in an application this year. So there's nothing stopping it. And I think the really good thing would be to be clear on it was sent in and this is the work that's been done to refine it to meet these criteria. Yeah.
Yeah, we encourage people to apply if they don't get in. Like I said, with 50 applications last time, it's difficult for the reviewers to whittle that down to 10. And sometimes it's just the competition is so tough. So definitely we say try every year. With our entrepreneurship program, we've had people try 3 years and finally get in on the 3rd year. So it's just that there are a lot of people out there trying for the same thing.
Yeah, and can I just introduce Judy, who's on our call, and Judy and I have sort of been in communication for the last year or so. But Judy is interested in just meeting people within the research community, but within the cancer research community. She has a client who is interested in funding in that space, or potentially interested in funding in that space. Would that be right, Judy?
Yes, that would be correct. My client's interest is in anyone and any entity in Arizona that is focusing on cancer research.
Yeah, and Judy's email is in the chat if you want to. And we can share it beyond as well. Thanks, Judy.
Thank you, Mary and Juliet.
Okay, is there any other questions? And if not, we could wrap up. And just know if questions come up, feel free to reach out. Yeah. Okay, guys. Thank you very much. Thanks for joining. Bye.